Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, we have one area now, Barbados, is trying to make it easier for people on cruise ships to visit. And then we have another overhyped article in the media, and I just have to make a comment on it. So Barbados decided that they're going to try and make things a little less complicated, a little easier for people who wish to visit from a cruise ship. They have a lot of cruise ships and different companies that go to Barbados. So here's how they broke it down. Number one is all passengers have to do some sort of wellness check where they are questioned, whether it be by paper, by computer, by whatever, where they're asking how their health is, do they have any symptoms, that kind of thing. The same thing you have when you go into a hospital or something. You ask those questions before you ever get inside. So they're trusting people at their word, I guess, that no, I don't have any symptoms. We all know how well that works. We saw a cruise ship just a couple weeks ago turn around because a person had symptoms, wasn't feeling well, got on the cruise ship anyway, and less than 8 hours later went to the medical team and said, yeah, I don't feel well. Well, you shouldn't have got on the ship to begin with. So that's one. They also are saying that everybody has to be fully vaccinated. So when they say fully vaccinated, I have not seen any give or take about people who have, like under 5 children. I don't see anything right now on exemptions. So far this is the only rules I've been seeing in their website was on this. So must be fully vaccinated, must have completed a full regime of vaccinations. So will that mean, and the way they word it there, full regime of vaccinations. So if at one point the status changes from needing 2 shots to also needing the booster shot to be considered fully vaccinated, that might be, there's the term, that'll be the full regimen then, right? If you only have 2 out of what they're recommending for 3, then you're not fully vaccinated anymore. So keep that note in mind. All people doing shore excursions, and here's the big one, because people want to know what can I do when I get there, if anything. So everyone's vaccinated, blah, blah, blah. If you have a PCR test, either standard or rapid, not an antigen test, a PCR test or a rapid PCR test within 48 hours of the day you're arriving, then you are free to roam around Barbados. You can book your own excursions, you can go wherever you want, you can walk out in the community, you can do what you want to do. If you cannot produce a COVID test, a PCR or RT-PCR test, then you can still go ashore, but you have to go in what you would call the bubble shore excursion. That's booked from the cruise line. The destination is kept into minimal areas so they don't get out into the community. You're not free to walk around, but at least you can go ashore, which is, it's better than being turned away completely, because the vast majority of people book shore excursions through the cruise line anyway. And then they also have disembarkation. If you happen to be wanting to get off there and stay there, then you are going to have to prove, again, a 48-hour PCR test in order to be able to get off and freely walk around. If you cannot get that done on the ship, you are allowed to have a transport to your hotel or your destination where you can get it done there if it's available. But you cannot leave the area until that test result comes in. And if you test positive, you're quarantining at your expense anyway. So it is a little bit easier. It's still complicated than just come on in, everybody. But at least now, if you can't get that 48-hour PCR test, because tests are hard to come by right now, you can still book shore excursions in Barbados. That's a good thing. Now, I want to talk about the Ruby Princess. The Ruby Princess just docked in San Francisco, and it's being described as an outbreak on board. And I read this article in The Guardian, and I have an issue with the way they're wording it. Again, surprise that I would have an issue with it. And I don't mind them reporting it. That's not the big deal. Of course, go ahead, report it. But the spin they're trying to put on it, I found it very, very disturbing in a way. But before I get there, let me just invite you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Really does help the channel out. Tells YouTube, hey, people are interested in this type of content, and spreads it out to more people. As well as you'll be notified of any videos coming out that just, keeps you up to date with cruising, what's happening with your cruise ship, what's happening with the restart, what's happening with the CDC, what's happening with cruise ports. Everything you need to know about cruising. Again, it really helps the channel out, and I would really, really appreciate it. So I was reading this article where, in The Guardian, that in San Francisco, the Ruby Princess, we all remember the Ruby Princess was the one that docked in Sydney, that was deemed as very low risk. They just let everybody off the ship. This was right at the beginning of the outbreak, back in March of last year. And it led to like 900 different cases, widespread through the community, etc. Well, they're kind of comparing this to that in the article. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because they're assuming that the way we are right now and the situation we are in right now is exactly the same as it was at the beginning of the outbreak. And so they go on to start saying, that there was 12 passengers who tested positive. And when they arrived in San Francisco, it brought back memories of what happened in Sydney, where 900 people and community spread, and it was widespread. What's happening right now? This is look what happened then. Is it going to happen again? Okay, well let me clarify that. In San Francisco, the day this cruise ship arrived, that had 12 passengers on it that had COVID, reported 1,803 cases that day. 1,803 cases. And here comes the Ruby Princess in with 12. And by the way, all 12 were completely asymptomatic, that were tested in random tests and tested positive. They weren't sick, they didn't feel sick, and every single one of them, when they disembarked, either went to a quarantine hotel to sit out till they test negative, or they were privately transported home to sit out their quarantine. A completely different situation than happened in Sydney at the beginning of the pandemic, when they released thousands of people who they probably shouldn't have at the time into the community, who just went home and went about their normal business. Nobody was wearing masks back then. Nobody had vaccines back then. The virus was completely different back then. The stores weren't closed back then. Schools weren't closed. Nothing was going on back then. We weren't even cleaning like we do now. We weren't even telling people to wash their hands yet. But they're trying to draw a correlation between what's happening right now with 12 people asymptomatic in a time where we have vaccines, and a time where we have new stringent cleaning policies, and a virus that's far less mortality rate and hospitalization rate than the other variants have had so far. It really rubbed me the wrong way when they were trying to spin this just because it was the Ruby Princess. And it has that stigma of what happened in Sydney. Just like the Diamond Princess has that stigma of what happened in Japan. It's time to forget the past. The past is the past. What happened in March of 2020 is completely different than what's going to happen in January of 2022. Things are completely different. There's a like, it's to the point where I'm annoyed when they keep trying to bring up past issues. And they called it, in this report, they also said, we hearken back to when cruise ships spread the virus worldwide. Excuse me. First of all, it wasn't the cruise ships that spread the virus worldwide. If anything, it was airlines that spread it, but it was community spread, because the last time I checked, Wuhan, China, where this all started, not a single cruise ship goes there. Not a single cruise ship can go there. So, yeah, I'm thinking it spread worldwide another way, right? So, yeah, I think it's time the media kind of get off that and start looking at today's facts instead of looking at ancient history. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.